See, I believe that you have very patiently been waiting for your question to be answered. Vancy, you want to know if a giraffe if I've ever heard a giraffe belch before. As you correctly surmise, it is a ruminant and therefore will produce a lot of gas which comes out of the front end of the alimentary canal as opposed to the rear end like a zebra. Vancy, I have never heard a giraffe belch as far as I'm aware, but you're absolutely correct that they would belch, just perhaps not noisily. They'd probably just do it very subtly. So watch now the neck. You'll see the next bolus coming up. There we go. So, excuse me, Vancy. Vancy, a giraffe absolutely will belch, but probably very quietly, in a polite manner, as befitting one of their regal grace and stature. Yeah. I'm afraid we can't get any closer to it because, as with all the animals in the entire Greater Kruger National Park at the moment, none of them are currently standing where we're allowed to drive. That is just to the south of our boundary. And as you can see, there are no fences, of course. It's just boundaries that we aren't allowed to cross with our human property laws. But the animals are unfettered by the legal ramifications of crossing boundaries, and so they can move up and down as they please. All right, Brian, let's leave that giraffe who's very unkindly not with us. Methusa onto Vuyatela or Djuma, and then cross south into this property to the south of us. Oh, Brian, where are the animals? Everywhere but here. So it would seem. There is a zebra, Brian, on top of a termite mound. Look at that. That is magnificent to see. Gee whiz. Look at that, everyone. Them sitting on top of the termite mound. Now, this is not uncommon. Well, it's uncommon to see, but I don't think it probably is uncommon behavior. They are doing it, of course, because the nutritional content of the grass on top of a termite mound is much higher than it is anywhere else, and that's because of the dung. As Ruth from Pennsylvania asked about how they make the termite mounds, it of course is made of dung and saliva and sand, so the fertilizer, basically natural fertilizer that those termite mounds are made of, creates conditions where the grasses are tremendously nutritious. Isn't that fantastic? Comes another one up the other side. This is really lovely to see. So, as you can see, these are very adept at climbing, these zebras, and it might lead you to believe that they were in fact mountain zebras, which they are not. They are plains zebras, but we do get out two other species of zebra in southern Africa. One is the Hartmann's mountain zebra, and the other is the Cape mountain zebra. And the most noticeable difference, of course, to my mind, you will read all sorts of different differences, but to my mind, Burchell's or plain zebra like these ones look like horses to me. I find that the the mountain zebras tend to look much more donkey-like than they do horse-like, and they've got slightly more bowed backs. They're actually a bit bigger, I suppose, which isn't very donkey-like, but they're a bit bigger, got longer ears. They don't have the striping all the way down to the belly, and they tend to have brown muzzles, and they're very white bellies, and if you saw them next to each other you wouldn't confuse them at all. But they do live in the most tremendously dry environments, the mountain zebras. So these mountaineering plains zebras are not in fact mountain zebras at all. They're just very adept at climbing onto termite mounds. I mean, that's that's quite a feat that they've managed to get up there. And interesting also that the grass is very clearly tastes better up there than it does down below. And I will try at some stage to taste the difference between non-termite mound grass and termite mound grass and see if I can taste the difference. I think these zebras are just spectacular, I must say. I've always been a huge fan of the zebra. Just magnificently designed. Might have something to do with my enjoyment of horses. You can see the trees just behind those zebras are really starting to move now as this wind starts to pick up. It's a couple of impala just behind. And those impala, while they are fairly comfortable around the zebra, they will avoid them. They won't get too close, and that's because the zebras can be a bit nasty when it comes to other species. They can be a bit nasty when it comes to their own kind too. They've been known to kill foals. We witnessed a dreadful incident where a young stallion killed a foal not too long ago, and so you will find that a lot of other species will avoid them quite studiously. That is really a lovely picture. They really are relishing that grass. I don't think I've ever seen this before. It is a massive termite mound. I mean, it's probably, well, it's probably about 2.5 to 3 meters high. Maybe, yeah, about 3 meters high. And it will be a lot bigger, wider than you can see on your screen, because it'll extend quite a long way underground. And yeah, I mean, I think it's probably in diameter, it's probably a good 30 meters in diameter, if you take into account the below ground portions. You can possibly even hear the wind starting to whistle a bit as it blows through the trees and a few of the new leaves that are starting to sprout. 2, 3, 4, 5 zebras. He's right on top there. If I had a good camera, it would be quite a good picture if I could get him to lift his head up. Right, I think that is the best zebra sighting I've had for some time. Lurking on top of the termite mound there, not far from the Arethusa boundary now, so we'll get a quick update from them and then we'll head north. Wonderful. Things are looking up, Brian. Tracks of a lioness here. You might actually be able to see them. I think you will be able to see them. Let me jump out quickly. Well, you would have been able to see them in the sun. See this one, Brian? Yep. So here's the lioness track here. I think it's probably from those Styx lions that went south down into what was called Hoffman's early this morning. Probably, you know, that means they probably didn't come onto Djuma. They just came straight down this cut line and then headed south. And as the sun comes out, you can see quite nicely the 4 toes and the 3 little back pads, or 3 lobes of the back pad. And I know it's a lioness from the size. It's too big to be a male leopard, and it's much too small to be a big male lion. A big male lion would be that big again. So the size of my hand. I forgot about the zebra, which has now taken fright at my explanation of the word lion. Looked up and panicked and has now descended from its castle. Right, on we go. Really need to have quite good light to show tracks effectively on a camera. So nice to have the light coming from the angle that we did. Right, I shall try once more to get hold of someone on Arethusa. Any station Arethusa, do you copy? Well, they're trying to talk to us. Sorry, I'm vaguely copying but not copy. I'll try and get a little bit closer. Just checking here to see if there isn't anything going back across into Djuma. I don't see anything. Oh, look at that. Pretty nightmare in Dallas. While we are just going to try and get back and have a look at these little dwarf mongoose that have flattened themselves against this mound. You see them there, Brian? Is that alright? They're just sitting against this mound, loving the sun, and really kind of, they are not very, I wouldn't describe them as particularly tough, these dwarf mongoose, so they're just trying to get a bit warm, and they won't be enjoying the wind at all. They'll just be trying to get as much sun as they can before going out on a foraging expedition. Pretty nightmare, you want to know about mosquitoes and whether we have problems with them in the area or not. Pretty nightmare, we do have problems with mosquitoes, but not with worms. Apparently you say they give worms to the animals in Dallas, Texas, where you're from. No, they don't do that so much here. It's malaria that we have to watch out for. Again, not really where we are, because there isn't a large sedentary population of human beings. Malaria is not too much of an issue in the reserves, but certainly out in the villages it can be a bit of a problem. And so the first thing you do if you get a temperature is to go and do a quick malaria test. Very easy to cure if you know you have it, but it becomes, the longer you wait, if it goes untreated, it can be potentially fatal. And malaria, of course, requires both the mosquito host and the human host. And so in the absence of a sedentary population of human beings, you find that malaria tends to be a much smaller problem than it might be otherwise. Thank you, Pretty Nightmare. I managed to I did a quick mosquito bomb of my my little home yesterday, and wasn't assailed too much in the night. The major problem, of course, oh sorry, they are still there. Major problem with the mosquito at the moment is the noise they make while you are trying to sleep through the sweaty night. You can see the light changing all the time as the clouds start to scud over us. And they're coming in from the southeast. So if you look at them now, you can see them moving from the left-hand side of your picture to the right, and that's indicative of a front coming in from the southeast. Marvellous. Right, I think we should carry on. I'm going to try once more to get hold of Arethusa, and if we fail with that, we'll just head north, I think. But I would quite like to see young Madiba and his mum. Right, here we have arrived at the boundary of Djuma and Arethusa. We'll just drive a little bit onto Arethusa and see if we can't get an update. Okay, here we go. Stop the car to maximize possible signal. Good morning, any stations, Arethusa, do you copy me? I'm just come on at the signpost, so if you're close by, can I have an update for the morning, please? No good, I'm afraid. Not copying them. Okay, there we go. There's no update. Copy, thank you. We're going to head north towards the Djuma waterhole. I think we're still quite away from the possible elephants, but we might find some others on the way there. Never know. I'm going to definitely try that trick where not a trick, I'm going to try and find a termite mound that's got new grass on it, and then we'll sample some of the other stuff away from the termite mound and see if it doesn't taste any different. You notice immediately that they move from termite mound to termite mound trying to eat. In the days when we were allowed to do that sort of thing, of course. Shelley in California, a very nice question from you. Of course, when we watch much of our television is American, and when we hear Americans say zebra, we immediately say no, it's not zebra, it's zebra. And Shelley, you say you were out here last year. That's wonderful. I'm very glad that you came out here, and you were told that the correct pronunciation is not in fact zebra at all, but zebra. And that is true, Shelley. The correct pronunciation is zebra, not zebra. I'm not really sure where zebra came from, or why it was ever said like that, but I think that's the case with lots of different accents around the world which say different things. But I think the correct one is definitely zebra. It's always interested me how the same spelling, the same language has resulted in so many different kinds of pronunciations of various words. The British say yogurt, we say yogurt. Americans say tomatoes, we say tomatoes. And nobody says potato, right? We all say potato. Bit of a squabble going on there between some drongos. We saw a horrible fight the other day between two drongos. One nearly killed the other, pecking and grabbing at his throat and had him pinned on the ground, and you can just hear them making a big noise off to the left-hand side. Unfortunately, they're quite far away. But the drongos are those small black spots in the middle of your screen. Let us not tarry long with them, but marvellous sighting. Well done, epic drongo aerial dogfight there. Well done, Brian. Yes. At least 2 pixels in width. And of course, on the accents, and why it's relevant to this drive is the use of the word aluminum, which is what the Land Rover is made of. It's made of aluminium if you're from Britain. It's made of aluminum if you're from America. And now the British, of course, will tell you that aluminium is, definitely the correct pronunciation, and that the Americans will tell you that aluminum is. Neither of you are in fact correct. According to Mr. Bill Bryson in his magnificent book, A Short History of Nearly Everything, The correct word is allumium. Allumium, as far as I remember. And so none of us are correct, and so we can't point fingers at each other. The Land Rover is made of aluminium. And what that means is that if it bursts into flames, it will burn to the ground. Quite unlike a steel car. Not that it's about to burst into flames. Well, we hope. Think of other words that might be conflicting. Now, a very interesting question as we drive through here in the hopes of seeing some elephants. And Laurie, you in Wisconsin, you've definitely noticed that the elephants here push over trees, and you want to know, do they ever push over the power poles? Laurie, they don't tend to, you know, and that's mainly because there's nothing for them on the poles. There's a Battalier. Is that what we're looking at, Brian? Coming down. Look at the way this beautiful bird flies. Magnificent Battalier coming over us. Oh, that's wonderful. Look at the way he's balancing as he flies into this gusting wind. So, Laurie, they don't push over power poles, and that's mainly because there's nothing to eat at the top of them. There's no bark on them for them to eat, so generally they don't. Oh, that's wonderful. There's a male Battalier. There's no other bird that's able to fly with so short a tail with a wind blowing like this. Oh, that's wonderful. Look at that. It is truly a wonder of the avian world, the design of the Battalier. Wow, that's beautiful. I know I've told the story before, but the Battalier has no tail. It takes 7 years to get to that adult plumage, and it's born with a long tail. And the reason for that is that it's so difficult to fly with no tail. And you saw it rocking from side to side, completely unlike a vulture or an eagle, for example. But no self-respecting vulture or eagle is going to try and fly at that height in a wind like this. They'll end up on the floor pretty quickly. And the Battalier is so sophisticated, its flight design is so sophisticated that, I mean, it takes 7 years to learn to fly without a tail, because the tail gives you stability, and without a tail you become inherently unstable, and that's why it rocks like that. And apparently, quite interestingly, the American B-2 bomber, which is the stealth bomber, you notice that doesn't have a tail. It's basically just a flying wing, much like the Battalier. And you can't apparently fly those planes manually. You have to have computer control to help, because the design is inherently so unstable. Isn't that amazing? Right, onward. Another beautiful torchwood tree up ahead in front of us, and we saw that one at Buffelshoek Dam has started to flush its new leaves. And a torchwood is what we call semi-deciduous, and that means that it doesn't lose its leaves during the winter time. It remains green, but it will now start to replace its leaves. And the leaves will start to fall out. You can see them fluttering there in the breeze, and those leaves will fall out of the tree and be replaced almost immediately by the new ones that you can see coming through right now. Lovely. Balanites mogami, the torchwood, or green thorn. And it's called a green thorn, of course, Brian, because it has... Exactly. Every time I drive down one of these roads, and I mean we do it often obviously, it is amazing to watch how there's a change in the colour. And Scott was saying, Scott is something of a, he'll call himself an amateur, but I think he's quite a professional gardener. And he plants the odd seed and sees what happens. And he said yesterday he was sitting outside having planted a seed of something or other, and planted it a few days ago, and it's come up. He doesn't know what it is yet, so that's quite interesting. And it was about, he said, within the sort of brief 20 minutes he was outside watching it, he noticed it going from sort of pointing upwards to opening out. So you can imagine that process happening all around us now, and that's why it's literally from day to day it's becoming substantially and appreciably greener. Tracks of elephants on the road here. Very nice to see some elephants at this stage. I think the elephants, unfortunately, as the wind starts to pick up, they'll go into slightly thicker bush and try and avoid having the wind blowing upon them if they can. And for them also, they'll be so happy with the rain, because it does mean that they can now start to graze. An elephant will always graze if it has the chance to, rather than eat bark and leaves and pods and hard things that grind their teeth down. Grass is an excellent concentration of carbohydrates. And sometimes, I mean, they do need the pods for the protein, but the grass is the easiest thing for an elephant to eat. We're also now driving through a grove of what's called terminalia bushes, or silver cluster leaf. And the silver cluster leaf produces a flower that will make this area where we are now almost a no-go zone because of the stink. They smell like really rancid, dirty feet. So think of the foulest smelling foot you've ever had the displeasure of coming across in your life, and that is what this grove is going to smell like when the terminalia flowers come out. They must be pollinated by some sort of carrion-eating insect. We have a magnificent surprise, and I'm about to go completely off air. Something else will come upon air, and I will see you later. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the Wendy, who's made a miraculous return. Eugene has been up since the crack of dawn, putting all the technical things up. Scott and I managed to erect the aerial. That's about all we did. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Brett Leo Smith, and I'm going to be your guide for the next sort of 20 minutes. And I have, for a change, I have Scotty D on camera with me. So very different team to what we normally have. It has made an appearance once or twice in the past, but really great news. We have Wendy up and running, and thanks for the update from the Djuma count that there were elephants seen. So we're going to go try see if we can find those elephants. And really good to have two vehicles back, and I'm sure you're very tired of James droning on and on and on. He does like the sound of his own voice. So we're going to go see if we can find some animals instead. So a very gusty, windy morning, and I'm hoping it's not going to bring us another cold front, but that is a possibility. So apparently the elephants went southeast, so what I think we're going to do is we're going to go down Twin Dams, and then we're going to cross the Mawati a little bit further down and see if the elephants have popped out on the other side of the drainage line, or if they've popped out onto Twin Dams Road. So it's amazing how much the bush is changing around us. There's a sort of hue of green everywhere. The air is nice and crisp and fresh and clean. Yesterday I noticed that there was a lot of smoke in the air, and I think after this little bit of rain, I think the Kruger National Park and the Manuleti have taken that opportunity to burn some of their grassland areas in preparation for the oncoming summer. And so fire is actually good for a lot of Africa. The majority of Africa outside of the rainforest basin and the Congo basin are grasslands and savannas, and those are fire climax biome. So what that means is a lot of the plant species and grass species need fire to regenerate. It also destroys all the moribund dead sticks and grass that are everywhere that are actually unpalatable to most things. So I'm hoping the elephants have just been slowly moving through the drainage line to the north of me, and are hopefully going to pop out on around Vulture's Nest in that area there. Just going to be on the game drive radio for a second, see if there have been any updates on Vuyatela. Morning mobile stations, any updates for Vuyatela, please? Copy, thanks. Any update on the Incohomos? Copy, thanks, Joe. Oops. Copy, thank you very much. Sorry guys, it's just quite a strange little mark on the road here next to me that made my foot slip off the clutch there. Initially I thought it might be elephant dragging their foot, but now it actually looks far more like a drag mark to me. Very difficult to see with a strong wind, and it has been driven over. It still possibly could be an elephant dragging his foot, but the wind has moved the sand. I'm just going to move further down the road where it's possibly a bit softer and we might be able to see a bit better. What do you think, Scottish? Sounds good. I think there's the culprit. It was the eddies. It's just on that harder piece of soil. It did look slightly like a drag mark, but I think it was just the elephant maybe dragging a branch rather than dragging its foot. Even though it's very sunny, this wind is actually quite chilly. I really hope there's not another beastly cold front heading in from Mozambique off the ocean. lots of welcome backs for the Wendy. We're very excited to have her back as well, and definitely going to improve our chances on finding you guys the best sightings out there, having 2 vehicles operating. And hopefully soon we'll have 2 vehicles and a hawk operating. I can hear Scott giggling in the background there. I'm having a bit of problems with my radio comms, so I think Scott's actually hearing, but I'm only catching every second word.
Basically, X-Ranga has picked up on your foot slipping on the clutch and mentioned that you should be more careful and not break the vehicle that's just been fixed.
Well, X-Ranga, I actually have no comment back for that. See, I get slightly distracted around the things around me, like a possible of a leopard drag mark. And yes, I should possibly be a little bit more careful with the clutch, although I think the clutch is the least of our worries on these vehicles. Okay, I think there's any should be around here somewhere. Hopefully across on the other side of the Mulwati drainage line. No trucks coming out here. Seems to be getting colder and colder. I'm having quite a lot of problems with my comms. I think I'm actually going to swap with Scott quickly because I can't hear anything through this earpiece. I think there's a loose connection in it. Thank you very much, Scott.
No problem.
Okay. Hopefully I'll be able to communicate now. We've got a very interesting question from Sibusiso in Hammanskraal. For those of you wondering where Hammanskraal is, it's just outside Pretoria, one of the capital cities of South Africa. Sibusiso has noted that an elephant and a hippo have a very similar stomach size, and he was wondering why does an elephant then eat probably 2/3 more a day or in a feeding session than a hippo does. Well, Sibusiso, it's very, very simple. The Indies are much more active. They are moving for the majority of the 24 hours, and therefore they need a lot more food to sustain them over that period. Where we must remember, a hippo is probably stationary for a good 13 or 14 hours a day in the water. The other reason is that hippo's digestive system, even though it's not a ruminant, so it is not the most effective, it is still more effective than an elephant's digestive system. So the hippos actually have 3 stomachs, or 3 stomach compartments. They're not like a hindgut fermenter like a zebra, and what happens is they have a lot of microbacteria that actually get involved in the digestive process in the first set of stomachs. So the food starts to being digests it far earlier than it does in the case of an elephant. So, and then on top of that, not being mobile for the majority of the day makes them sort of their stomach far more efficient at digesting. And also really big point is that they don't move for 14 hours a day, whereas an elephant probably doesn't move for 2 or 3 hours a day. Speaking of elephants, I'm hoping they've popped out somewhere in this block. So just to give you the facts that Sibo Siso went through, a big elephant bull is capable of eating up to 300 kilograms of vegetable matter in a day. A cow probably 150 to 200, but there's a big hippo bull only eats 60 kilograms of vegetable matter in a day. I mean, but just think about it, 60 kilograms is still an incredibly large amount of food. I'm going to try to do the conversion for you into about 45 kgs is about 100 pounds more or less, so probably 150 pounds or so, 60 kilograms. That's about what a hippo eats in a night, and then obviously the elephant is called at 250, so well over 500 pounds of vegetable matter in a day. Come on, elephants, where are you hiding? I did hear a report on the Game Guide channel that there were possibly some elephants near the Buffelshoek boundary, so we're going to head up towards there and then possibly cut across, see if we can catch up. I think it's a different herd from the one that came to the Djuma waterhole. So I hear Scott found something very interesting at this little nest site. We've seen now the third different species utilizing it, and it doesn't look like they're at home at the moment, but in this dead knobthorn we've seen, I know Scott last year during the summer months saw a woodlands kingfisher nesting in here, and then we have seen a rock monitor utilizing it, and now Scott tells me he saw a lilac-breasted roller utilizing it. So they timeshare in these nesting holes, and different animals and different birds will use it at different times of the year. As it's got a bit warmer, you'll probably find that rock monitor has moved along and is far more mobile than he was during those cold winter months, where we found him basking out of that hole almost every morning. But nice one to come check on. Be wonderful to see if that roller has any success in raising chicks in that particular nest. Or will the rock monitor come back for a snack of lilac-breasted roller eggs or chicks? Also, the one other issue with that hole, but from what we can see, is also it's probably quite an easy target for a predatory bird like an African harrier hawk to get its feet in there to feed off the chicks of the lilac-breasted roller. It is possible that these elephants have stayed in this very thick block here, and that will make it a little bit more difficult for us to find them. So we've chatted a little bit about elephants and hippos so far this morning. Now Sandy from British Columbia has got a very interesting question. If any animal out here in the bush basically is barren, so an elephant, a lion, a leopard, and she's unable to have babies, will she still continue to come into estrus and attempt to mate? And then said same for the male if he is sterile. Most definitely, Sandy, they will try and mate, and they probably don't have that conscious knowledge that they are unable to produce babies, so they will definitely continue to try and mate even if they are barren. And with elephants in particular, if we go to the male side of them possibly being sterile, I was lucky enough to be involved a few years ago as an observer on a laparoscopic vasectomy of an African elephant bull. So there's a little reserve on the border of Swaziland called Sikumvela, and they had a problem. The elephant population was expanding too much for this very small reserve. So in the past, many different things have been tried to curb elephant populations, from hormonal treatments of the females. What happened is that it really confused the sort of social structure of the elephants using hormones. So as a bit of a new study, and it was actually sponsored by Disney, all the procedures and the drugs were sponsored by Disney. And so what they did is they decided on a percentage of the elephant bulls. So they obviously didn't want to stop them breeding completely, guys. It's just a little, in this strong gusty wind, there's a little female diker. Hopefully she doesn't bolt. There's a little male. I think I see some horns there. Yep. So bedded down in this cold, gusty weather. Nice little spot, but protected behind a big bush there. You can actually see those pre-orbital glands very clearly below the eyes there. Trying to decide whether we've actually spotted him or we just happened to be in the area. So, especially with this gusty wind, I'm not going to stay too long. We might disturb him, we might run, and this is not the type of weather he wants to be mobile in, because with a strong wind, his sense of smell is affected. Also, probably more importantly, his sense of hearing. So it would be good hunting weather for any of the cats in this weather. But back to those elephant at Sikomvela. So they decided on a sort of a scale how many male elephants they were going to snip, so to speak. And those elephants then continued to behave, even though they were sterile now, exactly like wild elephants or non-snipped elephants would. They came into must because the body was still producing the hormones, and obviously there just wasn't a deposit made. And so they continued to act on it, and it worked very well in that situation. Because it was a very small reserve and the elephants continued with their natural behavior, their hormones weren't affected, which is probably the biggest problem with the hormonal treatments. It really changes estrous cycles, must cycles, and it can affect the whole social dynamic in elephants. So it is a very useful tool in small reserves, that vasectomy, and it is quite an incredible procedure to watch. And basically what happens is a vet goes in the helicopter with his dart gun, and then the ground team's on the bottom, and now an elephant's testes are right up at the top of its back, just in front of that back hip bone. So quite a difficult place to operate on. So what they did is they dart they would dart the elephant, and off it would run, and they would actually, while it was slowly coming under the influence of the drugs, M99 is the drug used in this case, and they would shepherd it towards where the ground team would be waiting there a road, and the ground team, part of the ground team is a big flatbed lorry with a crane. So then what would happen is the elephant would go down, and vets would obviously be there to administer stuff, and they're obviously very specialized vets that were brought out from the United States for this procedure. Not much vasectomies happen on wild animals out here in the bush, but in zoo animals and stuff like that it does happen. So there were some very specialized vets who came out from the States, 4 of them, and once this elephant was now darted, they would then put a harness around it and lift it up and hang it off the edge of this low bed lorry from a crane, and then the vets put up their table and stuff on the flatbed of the lorry and make the incision and stuff with the elephant hanging next to them. So the base of the lorry became their work surface, and the elephant hung off the ground next to them so they could perform the operation. And it's an amazing thing. They put a tube probably about this big into the incision, and then a video camera, and then a really incredibly long sort of set of scissors and stitching stuff. And I mean, the whole process was over in about half an hour. Stitch him up, let him go, wake him up, and off he went. But it was incredible to watch. You think the elephant's over here, and they're operating looking at a little computer or like a screen and using little joysticks and stuff to perform the operation. It was a really incredible thing to watch. But as far as I'm aware, it was a very successful thing, and it has not stopped the breeding in total. They obviously left some bulls unsnipped, and so the elephant population can continue to behave and function normally with natural hormones coming into place, but it has slowed down their breeding. And there's actually quite a problem in South Africa that you can't really give elephants away anymore. Most reserves are quite saturated with them, and particularly the smaller reserves. So there is different ways and means that people are thinking about to try sort of slow the elephant birth rates. So I heard the elephants were on the Buffelshoek boundary to the northwest of us, so we're going to go have a look over there. Apparently there's the combination of Scott and myself on the same vehicle is making quite a few people's day, and Arcadia would really like a picture of Scotty on camera, so I promised to take one, and I will post it after the end of the morning safari. You have made Scott smile from ear to ear at the moment. He's looking very chuffed with himself. Wow, look at that. Now, if we look at the road ahead of us here, you can see how this mud wallow is probably going to take over the road at some stage, and we're going to have to move the road. It looks like the Ellies have had a lot of fun in here. You can see they've sprayed the mud out of the hole all over the road, and they've actually even extended the hole into the road now. Muddy. Right, we're going to have to think about maneuvering the road, because I don't think that mud wallow is going to stop going. So I'm sure there might have been a few bugs that might have taken advantage of that mud wallow. It is now dry from the elephants and probably some buffalo splashing around and wallowing in it. So the mud wallows or pans, as they become eventually, that we find a lot of life in, are the more mature ones, the older ones, because there is a chance for vegetation to start growing on the edges. These ones that are still in the process of being made, you might find terrapins once we've had a lot of rain and it's very full in them, and they're just waiting to attack the buffalo. And speaking of a buffalo that was attacked, this is the remains of that buffalo that was killed by the Birmingham boys. And they abandoned it quite shortly after they left probably 3/4 of the buffalo there and charged off to chase the Matimbas. There we go. I'm hoping in this area we move as well. Kuru's been sighted briefly a couple of times, so who knows, maybe the Queen will decide to put an appearance for the return of the Wendy. while we continue to see what else we can find along here, we're going to cross back across to Commander Bond, who is, as always, doing exactly what you ask of him.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. Very nice to have Wendy back online. It does mean that you don't have to stare blankly at me for the entire duration of the 3-hour drive, which I think is a good thing. Variety, as they say, is the spice of life. To the extent that my hat is now in a different direction, and that is because it's not so much for variety, but because the wind became so strong that it threatened to blow off my head. So please excuse my slightly gangster style, if you like, for the remainder of this drive. We have come to look for some buffalo bulls that were apparently around here. They have disappeared into the ether, much like everything else, much like the poor old elephants that Brent was trying to find. And we did go and have a look at the hyena den, where the hyenas were unsurprisingly not there. Perhaps there was a little one in the hole, but I didn't stick my head in to have a look. So they're around somewhere, I suspect resting up after an evening of foraging around the place. So we're now heading towards Twin Dams, where we'll see what we can see, I suppose. Like I said, it's very pretty out here. Lovely smells, sounds, and always nice to have the eeriness of a front moving in. There is an impala. Beautiful little male impala here. He's quite a magnificent animal, but he doesn't want to be alone for too long in the wind out here before a predator, it's assuming there are any on Djuma, will sneak up on him as the wind blows and rustles and takes away their scent and impairs his hearing by rustling. So he'll want to find some friends, but you can see in this light the magnificent musculature of their hindquarters and their shoulders. They really are spectacularly beautiful animals. Right, well, he's gone, much like many of his friends. And Sue's in San Francisco, while we're talking about hyena, you want to know how hyenas and wild dogs relate to each other. Sue's, they relate to each other very, very badly indeed. They are not friends by any stretch of the imagination, and they will fight readily over kills. Hyenas will definitely try and steal from wild dogs, and often will come into wild dog kills because wild dogs make an enormous noise when they kill, communicating and chirping at each other, and so often there's conflict between them, and there's definitely no love lost at all. They don't like each other in the slightest. There's a very odd looking tree here, Brian. What is this thing? Oh, it's so odd that it's entirely common. It is a Natal Gwari. Sorry, it looked very different. Everybody, that'll be about as fascinating as drying paint to you. I thought it was a different species, but it is a Natal Gwari. Well, that's a very pretty Natal Gwari, glistening there in the morning sun in its new fresh spring bloom. Well done, Brian.
Very nice.
That might win us an award.
Best sighting of the year.
Best sighting of the year. Next to the rock that Ruth in Pennsylvania asked us for, that Gwari must rank right up there. Right, on to Twin Dams we hie. Into the howling gale. Brian, what is that noise? Oh, this is a stick, everyone. Don't worry. I thought maybe we'd got something stuck. this is actually quite pretty and quite interesting. So there's a jackalberry tree above us here, and while we look at it, just look at the leaves floating down from it, if you can see a few of them. Sue's in San Francisco, just to wrap up the hyena and wild dog situation. They don't like each other at all. They are not friends. They will never be friends, and they are extreme competitors, and they sit 2 and 3 on the predator hierarchy that is topped by the magnificent African lion, conspicuous of course by his absence at Djuma at the moment. Now that tree is a jackalberry, and it is also, much like the Balanites magami, it is semi-deciduous, and it's now starting to lose its leaves. It'll replace them very quickly, but it really is a wonderful color, and it gives a slightly autumnal feel to the spring. Sorry, Suze, I also believe you want to know, do they prey on one another? No, they definitely won't prey on one another. I mean, a hyena might eat a wild dog if it found one dead, but I don't think they'd prey on one another at all, no. Lovely smell. So this tree will lose its leaves very fast and then gain some new ones. In fact, I suspect before they're all gone, the new leaves will start to sprout. Marvellous. Right. Twin Dams is a hive of activity. Not all the jackalberries are doing this now, most of them sort of around this time, but they all are now starting to lose their leaves. Oh. Thank you, Marianne. You apparently like my gangster look, so I shall maintain it for the remainder of the drive. That's more rock than gangster. Yeah. We'll just quickly drive up onto the dam wall here, and you can have a look and see how much water there is, but also how fast it's starting to dry out again. Beautiful pea green algae here. While we sit and have a look at Twin Dams, again I have no idea where its twin actually is. Kachino John, you want to know if with the seasons change we've started to see any rock pythons yet? Kachino John, I'm sure they're around, I just haven't seen any just yet, but they're one of my favorite snakes, I must say, so I'm hoping to see one fairly soon. We have had 3 snakes in camp recently. We had 2 variegated bush snakes and 1 red-lipped herald yesterday. Isn't that delicious looking pea soup inviting any animal that wishes to come to Twin Dams to sup upon its algal bloom? Oh, Brian, there's a brown snake eagle up there. And what's interesting is that it's almost hovering. I know it's not, it's quite far away, but it's almost hovering in this wind. And its cousin, the black-breasted snake eagle, is one of the only birds that is truly able to hover. Beautiful bird. And what differentiates it from a standard issue eagle like the Wahlbergs is of course that it has bare legs. It does not have the feathering down to the talons that a Wahlbergs or true eagle would have, and that of course apparently is to apparently it helps it to catch snakes. I'm not really sure how, but apparently it's quite helpful. I don't particularly buy that explanation. You can hear the wind starting to blow quite strongly now. So it'll be very interesting to see this afternoon what it all feels like. There he's hovering, dead still. And that's purely because of the wind. He's gaining height quite fast. He's a lot higher than he was when we first saw him. Beautiful. And Brian, there's a Wahlbergs above him. I don't know if you can see that. Way up. It's a tiny speck in the sky. You see him there? No, he's too far away. There was a Wahlbergs eagle way up, another sort of that height again above. And there are quite a few. If you look carefully, you can see one or two big birds around the place just trying to gain height as this wind and a little bit of heat starts to build. And Ramey, you wanted to know, is that green algae toxic at all? Ramey, it isn't, as far as I know. I mean, I wouldn't stick my face in it and have a drink, but I think that animals can drink it pretty well. And yeah, so I don't think it's toxic. I mean, it will certainly feed all sorts of other creatures. The catfish will enjoy it, and the tilapia will enjoy it, and probably various other things. Right, on that note, let us cross back across to Brent and see what he's got to show you, and I'll see you just now.
Welcome back to the Meandering Wendy, everyone. Scott and I have not managed to find the elephants, but we are still out and about. Hopefully we're going to find something soon. Otherwise, you're just going to have to listen to me drone on and on and on. We're going to have a quick look at Impala Plains. Nice open area. Maybe there might be some Impala feeding on that nice lush green grass. And Scott's actually spotted a plant that's growing all over the place. And it's too young to identify, so we'll show it to you, and I'm sure between us we're going to just keep an eye on this plant and try to figure out what it is as it gets bigger. So we were hoping for any sign of Madame Corolla, but unfortunately no tracks and no sign of them just yet. Going to silently coast onto Impala Plains. And the slim possibility we might be able to sneak up on some unsuspecting beast. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that we will be the only unsuspecting beasts on Impala Plains on this windy morning. As I suspected, the only unsuspecting beasts are us, not even Impala. Can you see your mystery plant, Scotty?
Not immediately, no.
Step forward a little bit. I'm really excited for the first wildflowers to pop out. I think it is going to be a race. I think the Waltharias will win, They've managed, some of them were even flowering a couple of weeks ago before the rain. Let's just see if we can find Scotty's his unidentified plant and we can have a look at it. There we go. Here's one here. So they're growing all over Quarantine. Scott said he's seen them on Mvubu Road, Sandy Patch, Impala Plains, and none of us are sure what it is yet. We're going to have to wait for it to get a little bit older so we can identify it. A really fun little cameo, and great to have the Wendy back, and also great to be on the vehicle with Scotty D. So it's been fun. For the last few minutes of the show, we're going and you will see 2 vehicles out on the Sunset Safari today.
Everybody, welcome back to Djuma. Wendy, as I said at the beginning of this drive, is a recalcitrant old cow. She's just gone on live again. I'm sure that she will be back for the afternoon though, with any luck. She's not my favourite. Although Jigger is older and seemingly more decrepit, she is far more reliable. We do not have a great deal of time left to find the plethora of predators that Djuma boasts. Rest assured, we shall return this afternoon in order to find them. Hopefully Brent and I will be back this afternoon. I know Jiga does have to have a few things done to her, but I think she'll be okay by then. So, it has been a drive of, well, shall we say, peace and smaller things that the bush has to offer. And I thank you once again for all of your comments and questions, which do stimulate many topics of discussion. Thank you very much. A big thank you to Brian on camera for persisting with me the whole way, and say hello to the thumb. Hello, thumb. Yes, xylitol free thumb, that. A big thank you to Tara and Louise in the final control, of course. And we're most pleased to have Wendy with Brent and Scott on camera today back. Hopefully all will be okay this afternoon. And a big shout out to Eugene, who obviously spent much of the morning fixing bits and pieces up. So, thank you very much. That's all I have to say to you this morning. We will see you this afternoon at some stage. I hope that you stay safe and happy and healthy wherever you happen to find yourself on the blue planet. Bye bye and see you later.